Have you ever wondered what love becomes when it refuses to die? I was born in the northern hills of Hamgyong province, where the winters never forgive and the silence carries secrets the state does not permit us to speak. Life was measured in rations, in faint voices, in the sound of boots against frozen soil. Yet, among all the things our government controlled, there was one promise it could never silence. A mother's vow. Her name was Cho Sun-hee. She wasn't a rebel, not a scholar, not even someone the officials would have remembered. She was only a mother, yet she became something more. I remember the night she made her promise. Her son, barely 6, burning with fever, while the clinic's doors stayed locked for official use only. She held him in her thin arms, rocking him beneath the flicker of a kerosene lamp, soft utterance words I can still hear in my sleep. Even if death takes me, I will not leave you. 3 days later, the boy lived. She did not. And that is when the silence began to move. First, it was the neighbors. They claimed to hear her voice on the winds that blew down from the mountains, soft, steady, calling her child's name long after dark. Some dismissed it as grief. But I knew grief. This was something else. I was there the night the boy, now sleeping in his aunt's home, woke with frost on his eyelashes. No window had been left open. His aunt swore she felt a hand pressing the blanket tighter around his shoulders. Gentle, deliberate, protective. In North Korea, we are taught that only the state endures, not the soul. But what happens when a mother refuses to obey even death? I tell you this because I lived across the courtyard. I heard her voice, and once, I felt her breath at my ear, and that was only the beginning. Do you believe silence can carry a face? I was not family. I was a nurse assigned to the district clinic in Chungjin, where sickness often came faster than medicine. Records were my burden. Births, deaths, the quiet erasures no one dared question. That winter, a file crossed my desk. The name was Cho Sun-hee. Cause of death, pneumonia. Cause of burial, none listed. The paper felt wrong in my hands. In this country, nothing is left blank, not even the truth. 2 nights later, I was walking back from the river when I saw her. Not her body, not even her shadow. It was the imprint of her face in the frost along the grim facade of an abandoned building. Eyes open, lips parted, as though rustling through ice. I stood there, frozen, until the wind scraped across the enclosing slab and the frost melted into streams. Her face vanished, but the air did not clear. The next morning, I told myself exhaustion had played its trick. But when I returned to the clinic, her file was gone, erased, as though she had never been. In North Korea, we are taught that people wither away because the state wills it. But this disappearance, this was different. It was as if she refused to stay buried. That night, my youngest patient woke screaming. Not from fever, but from a woman's voice echoing inside his ear. He swore the voice told him, "I am still here." I was trained to comfort children, to calm their fears. But when he spoke those words, I felt the cold crawl into my own chest, as though it had chosen me next. And I realized files can fade, graves can be erased, but a promise that breaks death itself, it does not fade. It hunts. Can a voice live inside containment? I was a guard stationed near Horyong, along the border. My duty was simple: patrol, report, never ask. At night, the compound held a stillness broken only by dogs and the hum of generators. But there was one side, a plain cement wall, where I began to hear her. It started as a faint humming low, almost like wind. Then words, clear. A woman's voice speaking a child's name, again and again. The side trembled when she spoke, though no hand struck it. I pressed my ear against the cold surface, and what I heard made me recoil. It wasn't just a voice. It was breathing, wet, uneven, close enough to fog the air. The next morning, the side was damp, as though someone had leaned against it from the inside. I reported it. My superior warned me, "Write nothing. Forget it. There are things the party does not record." He said this with a tremor that betrayed more fear than authority. That night, the humming returned. Louder. This time, it carried sorrow. like a sleep song cracked in half. My rifle, heavy in my hands, felt useless against it. When I turned to leave, I saw a small handprint pressed into the frost of the gate. Too small to be a soldier's, too deliberate to be chance. We are trained to obey orders, but no training prepares you for the sound of a mother who refuses silence. And I realized then, some walls do not keep people out. They keep promises in. Have you ever heard grief speak through a child's handwriting? I was a teacher in Musen, tasked with monitoring 30 students in a room colder than the outside air. Chalk dust clung to our coats. The portraits of the leaders watched every lesson. I had long ago learned to teach without questions, only answers approved. But one morning, a paper landed on my desk that should not have existed. It was from a boy who had been absent. His mother had died that winter. The handwriting was shaky, uneven, but the words were not his. It read, "I am with you, I promised." I called him forward. His hands trembled, but his eyes were calm. He said he had not written it. He said he woke with his pencil moving on its own, guided by someone else. That night, I stayed late to burn the paper. Fear of discovery weighed heavier than curiosity. Yet before the flame touched it, new words appeared across the page, as if pressed from inside the paper itself. Fire cannot silence me. I dropped it, heart hammering, but the words remained, glowing faintly until they sank back into the fibers. In our country, the party says the dead cannot speak. But here was a mother defying not only the grave, but the fire meant to erase her. I kept that paper, hidden, folded, pressed against my chest like contraband. And each night since, when the room grows still, I feel the faint scratching of a pencil against the wood of my desk, though no student is there. And sometimes, I hear her murmur, asking if promises bind tighter than chains. Have you ever seen words appear where no ink touched the page? I worked as a censor in Heisen, tasked with reading private letters before they were allowed to travel south. Most were nothing more than praise for the leaders, lines copied from slogans, or requests for grain that would never come. But one envelope made my hands pause. The writing on the front was faint, almost like water stains, yet it carried a name I recognized. A woman declared dead 3 months earlier. Cho Sun-hee. Inside was no letter, only a sheet of plain paper. At first, it seemed blank. But as I held it to the weak bulb above my desk, words began surfacing across the fibers, rising like bruises. My promise remains. The letters deepened, inkless yet darker than any pen. And then, beneath it, a line formed that struck the breath out of me. Even censors cannot erase me. The room felt smaller, the air thick. My training told me to destroy it. Yet as I reached for the match, the words spread, racing across the paper like veins. Burn it, and I will write again. I dropped it, but the message didn't fade. The desk beneath my hands trembled. I knew then that this was no superstition, no rumor. It was defiance, stronger than the party, stronger than the grave. And as the light flickered above me, I felt the paper shift on its own, sliding closer, as though demanding I read it again. I never touched it after that night, but I have heard faint voices, even here in Heisen. When a mother's promise refuses silence, even the state cannot bury it. And I fear that paper is not the only place she writes. Have you ever heard a sleep song with no voice to sing it? I was a railway worker in Kilju, responsible for night shifts that stretched longer than the cold itself. Trains carried coal, timber, sometimes things we weren't supposed to know. The station was always empty after dark. Just the tracks, the fog, and the rhythm of iron. One night I heard it, a song. Soft, fragile, like a mother rocking her child to sleep. The sound floated over the rails, too steady to be the wind. I followed it, step by step along the tracks, until I reached an abandoned freight car. Its doors had rusted shut years earlier, or so I thought. Yet as I stood there, the midnight chant grew louder, as if it leaked from inside. I pressed my ear to the steel. The singing stopped. In its place, a murmur. He is not alone. The metal was freezing, but when I pulled back, My skin burned as though someone's breath had lingered against it. I told no one. Not my wife, not the foreman, not the comrades who drank soju by the boiler to stay warm. In this country, you learn silence as survival. But the next evening, when I returned to the station, the abandoned car stood open. And inside, etched across the soot-stained containment, were words scratched by no tool I recognized. A promise does not rest. The car was empty. No woman, no child. Just that message written over and over, until it filled the steel like a wound that refused to close. And since that night, whenever the trains leave Kilju, I hear her song trailing behind the wheels. It does not fade with distance. It follows. I was not supposed to know, but silence has a way of reaching even the thickest containment. My name is Sunmi, and I worked as a hospital aide in Pyeongseong. Most days were a routine, wiping floors, carrying linens, keeping my head lowered. But one morning, a child was wheeled past me, her lips moving soundlessly. Her eyes followed mine, wide, unblinking. There were no cries, only that strange silence. I asked no questions. Questions were dangerous. Yet her stare stayed with me. Hours later, I returned to the ward to find her bed empty, sheets folded too neatly. No trace she had ever been there. That night, I overheard distant murmur in the laundry hall. She spoke of something she saw in the North Mountains. The others hushed the speaker quickly, but an icy shiver gripped my flesh. Children did not return from words like that. In North Korea, memory itself can fade. A missing file, a missing name, a child whose voice became too heavy for the system. And I wonder now, if the silence she carried was not fear, but a final attempt to leave a truth with anyone willing to hold it. That burden now lives with me, though I cannot speak it beyond these containment. The question I leave for you is this. In a place where even memory can be erased, who carries the weight of the stories untold? Subscribe to the Veil of Secret, because silence often speaks louder than words, and for more real haunting stories, chilling mysteries, and untold truths.